Discover, this is Daniela.
Hi, it's Jennifer Coolidge. I just want to thank you for making me feel so special. I earned cash back on debit for my dinner party groceries.
That's great, but with Discover Cashback Debit, we give everyone cash back on everyday purchases. Anything else I can help you with?
Do you like asparagus and mushroom sorbet? I've got leftovers.
Introducing Discover Cashback Debit, a checking account with cash back. It pays to Discover. Eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
Let's talk more about what's happened in a US courtroom today where Donald Trump has laid into both a judge and a prosecutor. Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent and joins us live. Simon, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Great to speak to you tonight. Tell us more, sir. Good evening.
Great to be with you, Ben. Yes, it's been an extraordinary day in New York because Donald Trump actually kept the judge, the prosecutor, and the entire courtroom waiting for about 8 minutes while he stood outside the courtroom, addressed reporters, and excoriated the entire legal process that he is facing in New York. Remember that this is a civil trial for fraud. He is accused, indeed, in a summary judgment. The judge in the case has already found him guilty of overvaluing the values, inflating the values of his Trump Organization's properties in New York in order to secure favorable terms for loans from banks. And the prosecutor in the case, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, is demanding that Donald Trump be fined $250 million. And if this lawsuit goes against him when the final judgment is handed down, she may well find herself in a position completely to dismember his business empire in New York, literally to call the receivers in, expropriate Trump Tower and the other properties that he owns in New York City, and ban Donald Trump and his two sons from ever doing business in the state again. So in corporate terms and in branding terms, this is a very, very big legal battle that Donald Trump is facing. But what I think he made absolutely clear in the comments that he made outside that courthouse today, Ben, is that he is fusing together now the legal predicament in which he finds himself and his campaign to run for the presidency. And at times, the speech that he made to reporters sounded like it was an election campaign rally that he was addressing from inside the courtroom. He told reporters that they will be seeing a lot of him. It's very unclear whether he's going to be attending the whole trial, subsequent days of the trial this week. This thing is going to drag on for at least 3 months. There are more than 50 witnesses due to be called, and indeed some suggestion that the number could be 3 times that many. Donald Trump was not required to be there today. He chose to show up, and he clearly did so in order to choreograph all of this in a way that absolutely torpedoed, from his perspective, the judge as a rogue judge. He called Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, racist, a horror show. He said that something needed to be done about her, and he put the blame for his tribulations firmly at the door of President Joe Biden and the Department of Justice here in Washington, D.C., saying that everything had to be approved by them before this lawsuit was fast-tracked deliberately to derail his presidential campaign. Now, on the facts, there's no coordination between New York State's legal authorities on a case like this, a civil lawsuit, and the Department of Justice. But the facts did not get in the way of Donald Trump's rhetoric today, as so rarely they do. And he made it absolutely clear that he is going to continue making political hay out of the legal jeopardy in which he finds himself. And he's doing that for a very simple reason. He has watched since September of last year, when this particular case was laid against him, indictment after indictment, in jurisdiction after jurisdiction being laid down against him. He's now facing 91 criminal charges in a whole series of trials, some of them federal, some of them in other parts of the country, Georgia, of course, as well, and New York, too, another trial over the hush money payments that were made to Stormy Daniels. And every time these indictments are laid against him, his numbers climb in the Republican presidential nominating battle. He's now 40 percentage points clear of his nearest rival. So he seems increasingly confident that even if he's convicted at some of these trials, that it's not in any way going to derail his presidential campaign and may only fuel it further, because he is successfully arguing that there's a double standard and that he is the victim of political persecution, because his supporters buy the argument that this is all happening in a bid to interfere in the 2024 presidential election and derail him as the front runner in the race to take on Joe Biden. So a very dramatic day there. I mean, prosecutors, I think, can be very confident currently about the outcome of this trial, based on this civil trial, based on the summary judgment that was handed down last week by the judge in the case. It's obviously going to hurt Donald Trump to lose things like Trump Tower, but he made it clear today, Ben, that he is absolutely going to exploit that for all it's worth if and when it happens.
Simon, I totally understand that he's trying to motivate his base here. As you say, every time this happens, the support in the Republican base goes up. He must be aware that by playing on this so much, by turning up in court and so on, that perhaps he's improving his chances of winning the Republican candidacy. But surely, come the general election, he's doing himself a great deal of harm.
Well, I think that's unproven, because if you look at the numbers in the matchup, the head-to-head matchup between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, from, the best case scenario for Joe Biden is that they are equal. I think I saw one last week that had them both at 46%. It is not absolutely a given that Donald Trump is necessarily damaging himself in the general election stakes. I mean, you're absolutely right, though. This election is in two parts. First, you've got to win the nomination, and he clearly seems to be currently unassailable in that regard. Then he's got to find a way of persuading all of those never Trump voters out there, and they exist in their millions and millions, that either he's worth another shot or that Joe Biden is not worth turning out at the polls for. And in those head-to-head matchups, sometimes Biden's a touch ahead, sometimes Trump is a touch ahead. It's clearly, at the moment, a coin toss. And if you look at some of the battleground states where the election will be won, because remember, those swing states always decide the outcome of the election, places like Florida and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, in some of those, Trump has a slight edge over Biden. Now, it's a very, very long road between here and November the 8th of next year, but it's stunning that he is in that position at a time when he faces 91 criminal charges that could see him jailed for decades.
Absolutely astonishing. Absolutely incredible. Simon, good to speak to you as always. Thank you. That's Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent.